Once again, we are joined by another brother from the shrine of Maulana, and we would ask you, what's your name, sir?
I'm Munir Spurling
Okay, and where were you born?
in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. And when did you become a part of this tariqa? How did you meet Maulana? The circumstances and how did it happen?
I had become Muslim through long friendship with actually a Sudanese Egyptian brother, and I began praying and doing salat and fasting Ramadan in 1965, and a year or two after, I met some people who had recently met Sheikh Nazim in London, and I returned to the States and doing a weekly dhikr, and I began attending that. And after a couple of years, my wife and I had occasion to be in Egypt, and from there we went to Damascus to meet him in person where he was. So that was towards the end of 1979. We met him in Damascus. This was after several years of meeting some of his
How did
followers.
you feel after meeting and after starting following the tariqa? How did you find it?
I found he was giving voice to really what I had to a kind of Islam that I had thought was
Yeah,
from when I first became Muslim.
yeah,
And then I had found met a lot of Muslims who seemed to come from a totally different place, but
yeah,
with Maulana Sheikh I found somebody who was,
yeah.
that was a kindred spirit.
Yeah. Also, I really would like to talk about that experience. I mean, how do we differentiate with the people who have got different spirits from other people? Like, how can they be so effective positively that they will make you steadfast in your believing and in your practices and things?
I think with Maulana Sheikh it was, he lived what he was talking,
Yeah.
and he was humble. He never really spoke about himself. Um, and when you pray with him,
Yeah.
he would elevate your state,
Yeah.
and this was something that was quite palpable, very noticeable.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't somebody who was trying to beat you over the head with their idea of something.
Yeah.
And he gave people lots of space to be themselves,
Yeah.
and without telling them you have to be this, have to do that, have to do that. So at the same time, he was very rigorous on himself and very easy on the people around him.
Yeah. And what were you searching for? Obviously, when we are in search, yeah, we are in a state of mind. We're not getting the inner satisfaction in general when we are in search of reality. What state of mind did you have, like for the search, or how were you searching, or what were your thoughts before meeting the Sheikh?
Oh, God, that's a hard one. Because really, by the time I met Sheikh, having come to Islam, I found a lot of comfort in. By that point, I'd become finally comfortable that I had found something that seemed to fulfill a lot of what a lot of empty places
Yeah.
before. So, but so I found in the Sheikh somebody, and in his people somebody who could keep me on it.
Yeah. Okay, I've heard that you are by profession a doctor as well.
By training, yeah.
By
yeah,
training,
yeah.
they call you a doctor over here.
Yeah.
And what was that profession like? You were medically trained for?
Yeah, I was medically trained, and then shortly after I finished my training, was when I became Muslim, and my attention sort of was more towards that. And then when I met Sheikh, one of the few things he ever told me to do or not do, he said, "Well, don't charge any money for medical stuff." So it sort of made it so that it didn't fit quite with a Western professional
Yeah.
model. But alhamdulillah,
Yeah.
by that time I was already
So you
mostly
found
earning money through
okay.
real estate and other things
Yeah.
from family that
So
it wasn't a problem.
despite the fact that you were medically trained, you didn't touch that profession, or you didn't intend to make money out of that, or you
No,
didn't use
and
it
so
as
subsequently, really, I want most of the medicine I did was just sort of informally among people I would meet, and it would be mostly a matter of advice, and by hook or by crook, many people that we met were interested in kind of alternative medical things, which I had my own particular interest in alternative medical practices. But I found that most the service I was providing, besides sometimes treating simple things, was kind of trying to direct people who are adverse to following Western medical ways when I thought that was really their best medicine for them, and for others where I thought alternative medical approaches was probably a better way to go, that was fine. But mostly the only intervention I would make would be to try and encourage people to for certain kinds of things to go in a direction they weren't really inclined to.
Yeah. How has your health been after following the tariqah? Because this is a question which is a strange question, but I've seen people to be more healthier when they are content, they are relaxed, and this is through the different tariqahs. How have you been yourself? Like when I talk about health, I'm talking about the physical health, the mental health, the satisfaction, the relax, the contentment. How have you been in?
By and large, I haven't had significant. I'd say mentally and psychologically
Yeah,
better,
Yeah.
healthier.
Healthier.
But that just, as I say, many of the dissatisfactions and I found sort of peace of mind in this way. So those things sort of, a lot of what might have developed into problems or had been problems earlier in my life just sort of fell away.
yeah,
Physical health I've always had, alhamdulillah, not had many problems. So
yeah.
that I can't really say it's been
Okay.
I don't have a yardstick for measuring that.
Mhm. And in general, when we talk about the life, in general, like people are always surrounded by desires, and those desires are never ending. Like in general, for example, if I want to be a doctor, after becoming a doctor, I want to be rich. After being rich, I want to have the best car. After I have the best car, I want to be going to I want to be invited to different parties. And once I'm invited there, I want to be the best. So these desires are giving birth to different desires. And it's a never-ending story. And after following the tariqah, how does it, how does one get rid of the unnecessary desires?
I don't know that you get rid of them. They somewhat fall away. I don't think you even seriously approach the tariq unless you've had some realization that kind of rat race is not something that you want. You've somewhat seen as you say, that one thing leads to another, and it's just an endless of the same thing over and over again. And Maulana Sheikh would speak about in numerous different ways, but I think you don't really seriously follow a spiritual path until you've at least come to some realization that and lose some interest in following some of those ways. Other desires are always, it's always a constant battle, and sometimes you win, and sometimes they get the better part of you, and then you just go on.
Yeah, but the thing is, this battle is till the last breath, as they say in most of the three.
Yeah, and in some form or another, it seems. I mean, I don't know. There may be some who have a station where that's.
Yeah.
But
as I have heard, like they say, when nafs, when we call it the nafs, the ego, the self, and self-negation is the only path where you get the love of Allah. But then they say that somebody asked the question that what is nafs, or what is the self or the ego? They said it's the combination of the soul and the body. When the soul and the body part each other, it's not there. But if they are together, it's there. The self, the ego, the desires. How do you see that? And dying before dying, like die before you die. How do you see this reality?
Well, to a certain extent, becoming somewhat, as you become more and more focused in, at least my experience, in the spiritual practices, to a certain extent, certain energy you might, and it might be, maybe it's the spirit, begins to become strengthened. And from that, the effect is to weaken the pull of the body on the soul, and you begin to pull the soul more towards the spirit, and it becomes easier. But this, I mean, it's really, you're talking about the heart, and in this terminology, the heart has sort of is turning, and it's either facing the world, or it's either facing dunya, or it's facing the spirit, and so it's always, it's a very bipolar kind of almost schizophrenic kind of reality, but really, as you strengthen the spirit and its energy in the heart, then it becomes in a way, it becomes a pleasure that's superior to the kinds of pleasures that might be that the body is attracted to and addicted to. But those things I don't know that they die until you really die. And even when it says die before you die, I think it's a matter of, it's just a matter of weakening those things to the point where they're no longer controlling you, but you can control them.
Yeah. And is it, for a normal human being, is it possible, is it easy without a tariqah or without a guidance? How do you see it? Is it possible for a normal human being to even recognize this reality, that the desires of the self exist, which is causing destruction to the self and to the others?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, some of it, and again, these formulations. We're talking about one formulation of this process from in Sufic terminology. When you're talking about the nafs, and we're talking about the heart and the ruh and things like that. But there are various formulations of essentially the same realities in numerous different systems.
Yeah.
I think to begin with, you need some sort of intellectual or mental framework in order to understand, because you have to have aims and goals of certain sorts, and you have to have some sense of a far objective, and then you have to have some sense of what are the intermediate goals, or in terms of to get from here to there, there may be 6 or 8 different steps on the way, and what's necessary to be accomplished at each of those. So this is number one. One of the things the Sheikh does is he sort of becomes an exemplar. He becomes an example of somebody living something, sort of a living proof of something. He also becomes, because a lot of it is subtle in terms of, we often undermine ourselves, and it has a lot to do with just sort of an attitude or a mood in the approach, and the Sheikh sets a tone that is appropriate for each person. Some people need to be very, very strict. Some people need to actually learn how to relax into it. It's a lot of how you know, the recipe is not always the same. It's like it's the cure, the remedy is, everybody has a different illness, so that you can't use the same medicine for each one. And as I say, for some person, they're lazy, so they need to be. Other people are trying too hard, and that's their problem, or trying in the wrong way. And so a lot of it has to do with subtle indications that the Sheikh will give about. And then, I don't know, then just learning to get a sense of yourself. But I don't know where we've gone, where the original question was.
Yeah. So now my next question is, it leads us to another thing. Do you remember an event that you cannot forget with Maulana in their presence? Something that is unforgettable, an event that you would like to share with us that took place in your presence and the Maulana's presence, unforgettable.
Yeah, I don't know if I can communicate it correctly to
Yeah, we will bear with it. You can just narrate it.
Well, I remember when we were first here, the first time I was in Cyprus, it was actually, we got stuck here during the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
All flights were being canceled, and he said everybody needs to go because flights are going to be. We didn't have to go, so we were here, and very few other people. And there was one elderly lady. They just called her Haji Tesa, aunt, as like an aunt, and she had come to this side of the island from what's now the Greek side, in the Civil War here, and she suffered a stroke, and she was semi-comatose in the women's prayer room, and it took about a week and a half during which she was dying essentially, and some of the women were nursing her and whatever they could be done, but it was an inevitable process, and there wasn't anything to be done, and if she'd been in a hospital, it wouldn't have been any different. And I would go in sometimes, and it became a joke because I would read Yasin, and the Sheikh and the Sheikh's wife would laugh and say, we needed an American doctor to come in and read Yasin for Haji Tesa. This was sort of the joke, because there were plenty of people to read Yasin for her, and then when she passed on, we, as is the custom, in the mosque in the center of town, outside, we'd read the body with the casket would be in front of the mosque, and we'd read. They'd lead the Sheikh led janazah prayer for her, and then normally it's a mile or mile and a half to the cemetery. It'd be taken in a car, and then everybody would, but he said no, I want